Hey, everybody. This is Movie Recap Nation with you. Today we're going to break down the plot of the 2015 action-adventure movie, Survivor, based on true events. The first third of the 19th century Missouri River Valley. A group of trapeze, that is, hunters for animal skins under the leadership of Captain Andrew Henry, consisting of 45 people, preparing to load the extracted skins in a boat and return to the safe Fort Cayo, expecting to turn in their prey and make a good profit on it. The meal is led by experienced tracker Hugh Glass, who knows the area well, and who also teaches hunting and trapping to his son Hook, whose mother comes from a tribe of Indians. Suddenly the Indians of the Ricardo tribe, who clearly outnumber the hunters, begin firing from the bows. The confused trapeze find themselves trapped, surrounded on all sides by Indians, and perish one by one. Only a few survivors, including the voice of their wolf, manages to get to the boat and quickly safe place while the victors take everything of value from their camp and scalp the still living hunters. It turns out that the Europeans kidnapped the daughter of the Indian chief, who is now looking for her through the local forests and avenge the foreigners for their meanness. In the end, only 10 survive from the center. I is convinced that there is an ambush of Indians waiting for them downstream. So he suggests abandoning the boat and reaching the fort on foot. John Fitzgerald shouts that this is a very foolish idea, as it will take them 10 days longer to reach the place through the dangerous forests. However, the captain tells them to abandon the boat and follow the trackers. The sneaky John immediately draws a grudge and repeatedly insults the man and his son. And the tracker does not answer the insolent men. In order not to escalate the conflict, trapezes send an empty boat downstream, which, as the voice said, intercepted and plundered by the Indians. The hunters carry the heavy hides in the pouring rain for several hours, and at the end of the lineup decide to camp. Nevertheless, Glass surveys his surroundings for potential threats. The ranger spots several bear cubs when suddenly he is attacked from the back by a huge female bear. The animal delivers several powerful blows to the man before returning to the bear cub. Deciding that the man is dead, I barely has time to reach for his gun and shoot him in the muzzle, the bear returning to the noise. The man withstanding a second attack, the hulking bear once again pretends to be dead. Grabs out a large knife and summons the blade several times into the body of the bearess. The two roll to the bottom of the ravine, where the dead animal falls silent and the wounded man barely breathes beneath the huge carcass. After a while, the other hunters find Glass, who by some miracle is still breathing. Henry gives the injured man first aid. But the captain does not believe that it is possible to survive with such wounds. John is furious that the tracker made a shot, as it can attract cruel punishment to them. At the same time, the Indians meet with French soldiers and exchange the stolen hides for some horses and guns to continue their search for the chief's daughter. Despite everything, Glass is still breathing, though he cannot move or even speak, so that the others have to carry him on a stretcher, and the sun does not move a step away from the man. Soon it begins to snow and the cold weather sets in, making the journey incredibly difficult. John offers to alleviate the suffering of the eyes, so that they do not die themselves. The captain prepares to take a shot, but cannot dare to do so, as they are all alive only because of the voice. Henry then leaves 3 men beside the tracker to wait for the man to die before catching up with the others. Hawk and Jim volunteer and refuse to be paid extra. So John agrees to stay by the dying man's side for a triple reward. Hawk recalls the happy moments lived next to his wife and son. However, one black day, a foreign land invaded their settlement. They killed the man's wife in cold blood and left a serious burn on their son's face. Sneaky John waits until Jim leaves to fetch water and in private, persuades the voice to finally leave his life and give his son a chance for salvation. The ranger can't answer and only blinks. John begins to strangle him without a second thought. Suddenly Hawk appears, who pushes the villain away from Papa and calls Jim for help, but he doesn't hear him. John grabs the guy, pins him against a tree and instantly kills him. Van yells a knife into his belly, and eye rolls in horror at this. Unable to do anything about it. John hides the body, and when he returns, the man claims he doesn't know where the kid disappeared to. Early in the morning, John will Jim and says that he just saw not far from there past 20 Indians. Therefore, it is urgent to get away from here. Jim doesn't want to leave the dying voice, but realizes they have no choice. John drags the body of the trackers recently and pit sticks the earth on top and runs away. Jim leaves the eye with a flask of water and apologizes for everything and follows his comrade, and the tracker is left to die on the cold ground. After a few hours, Glass comes to himself and with great difficulty crawls out of his grave. The man crawls to his son, hoping that he may still be breathing. But unfortunately, the boy shows no signs of life. Eyes lies exhausted next to his son's body, mourning his loss. Jim realizes after a while that John has deceived him and, threatening him with a shotgun, forces the man to confess that there were no Indians. John explains that the tracker would have died anyway, so he made the only right decision. Then he abruptly snatches the gun out of the guy's hands and pulls the trigger. Luckily for the kid, there doesn't turn out to be any gunpowder in the barrel. So John drops the gun on the ground and continues on his way. And Jim sullenly follows him. Following, Glass, sobbing, says goodbye to his son, but he's not about to let his murder go unpunished. The man takes a woolen cloak and eats old meat of loose animal bones, so as not to starve to death. After a while, the tracker reaches the riverbank, where he drinks from a flask left by the jam. The man can hardly move, as the bleeding wound on his body is intolerable and painful. I builds a fire and burns the wounds with gunpowder to stop the bleeding. What makes him scream in pain? At the same time, the Indians reach the camp, where they find Hook's body in fresh blood. They conclude that the surviving captain and his men are still on the road, as it is very difficult for them to navigate without trackers. John and Jim are also trying to find their way to port. In the morning, Glass has to eat a dead bird because of unbearable hunger. He tries to stand up with the support of a stick, but immediately falls back to the ground. Soon the Indians appear, from whom the tracker tries to hide. But the natives quickly discover him. I dives into the mountain river, and the Indians shoot him from bows. The strong current very quickly carries the man to the waterfall. But, fortunately, he manages to get a hold on a floating log, and after a while the soaking wet putnik gets out on the river bank. Power fails to light a fire and put out his clothes. Six Eyes of Hunger returns to the river, catches a fish with his bare hands, and immediately devours it greedily. As darkness falls, the eye hears a strange noise nearby and struggles to move in that direction to ascertain its source. Soon the tracker notices a Cook Indian from the Pauli tribe eating a dead buffalo. The tracker begs the Indian to share, and he throws the man a piece of meat. In the morning, Hitchcock looks at the numerous wounds in his eye, who tells him what happened. In response, the local man shares that a hostile tribe killed his entire family and he is now traveling south to find his tribesmen. The Indian tells him faintly that vengeance is in God's power. And the eye stares at him uncomprehendingly. Hitchcock agrees to take out with him, and the two ride horseback together for several days, and at night they build a fire and take a rest. However, the wounds on the trackers' bodies begin to fester. John and Jim finally make it to the fort, where John lies to the captain that Glass is dead, and they give the man a proper burial. And Jim just sits by silently. John happily appropriates all the bounty, including Jim's share, which the guy willingly gives up. Because of the rotting RASites so badly that he falls off his horse without strength. Then Cook builds a small tent of branches and treats the wounds of the companion with hot stones and smoke. And the tracker at this time in his dreams says goodbye to his son at dawn, but he cannot find the Indian anywhere. Sometime later the tracker finds Hitchcock murdered and hung from the branches of a tree with the sign "Savages" on his chest. This was done by French soldiers who were camped nearby. The French had kidnapped the dog daughter of a Kara Indian chief a few days before and took turns raping the poor thing. I sneaks up on the Frenchman, who is about to take dirty advantage of the girl, grabs the girl from the ground. Gun. Men and freeze on the side. The ranger is about to steal the Frenchman's horse and calls the captive with him. However, the girl instead kills the rapist with his own knife and hides in the woods. I refuses all the horses to slow down the pursuers, climbs onto one of the horses and gallops away from the danger. In doing so injures a flask of jam on the ground. The Frenchmen fail to stop their horses in time, giving the trackers a chance to escape. A short time later, however, the Indians discover Glass, who attempts to gallop away from them on horseback, but falls off a cliff in the process. Tree branches cushion the fall and the man survives, but the horse is instantly killed. As night falls, it begins to get sharply colder, so the tracker digs into the horse's belly, pulls out the innards, and spends the night completely naked in the animal's body. At dawn, Glass continues his journey, obsessed with only one thought: to find and punish the murderer of his son. At the same time, a wounded Frenchman appears at the gates of Fort Cayo, telling him that all his comrades were killed by Indians who suddenly attacked their camp. Seeing gems flashed from the Frenchman, the captain decides that only the Hulk could have turned it, since everyone is certain that Glass is dead. Henry immediately sends a search party to the place where the Frenchman found the flask, and John realizes that if the captain learns the truth, he will shoot him for the crime he committed. Sometime later, the captain and his men discover a tired and frozen Glass in the woods near the fort. Returning to the fort, Henry is going to punish the murderer. Except that John has already managed to clear the captain's safe and escape in an unknown direction. The doctor treats the wounds of the trackers, but he does not care about his own life. The man wants only one thing: to get to the killer of his son. The captain agrees to go in search of John along with the voice. And soon the two leave the fort area on horseback. Ike is sure that the killer couldn't have gotten far, as he doesn't know the area too well. I and Henry split up to complete the search more quickly. The ranger soon finds a recently extinguished campfire and realizes that John is close by. Soon the captain walks right into the ambush of the assassin, who manages to shoot first. I rushes to the sound of the shot and soon finds the captain's vital body. Seeing a small avalanche in the mountains, Pathfinder realizes that the killer is quite close. Loading Henry's body onto his horse, I advances toward the mountain lingering. John shoots the man and runs to the horses. As soon as the body of the trackers falls to the ground, I, however, who was expecting this, jumps up from the second horse and shoots the assassin in the shoulder. John tries to hide in a small grove, but the eye follows on his heels. The two shoot at each other again, but wave. John then rolls down a steep slope, and the eye immediately repeats the dangerous maneuver. The eye is holding an axe. John snatches the knife and the two engage in a deadly fight. The ranger manages to overpower the killer and plunges the knife into his stomach. The opponents inflict several more serious wounds on each other, after which Glass has an opportunity to strangle the villain. But he remembers the old Indian's words about revenge and throws the scoundrel into the mountain river. The currents bring John right into the hands of the Ricardo Indians, who scalp him alive. The Indians do not touch the eyes, as they have found on the side that the tracker helped him escape from the French. Having completed his mission, the wounded eye rambles through the snowy forest, when the image of his dead wife appears before his eyes. What do you think of the movie Survivor? Share in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you all again.